Good morning.
We have nobody attending in person now. Terry was our one.
Is it working for you, Terry? How's it going? Sweet. I think you're on mute. That's okay.
Oh, I got it. Can you hear?
Got it. How's it going, Terry? You doing all right?
Excellent. Yeah. Sorry, I had to update some stuff, but I am here.
Awesome. Thank y'all so much for coming. I really appreciate it. I hope that this will be a helpful session for you. Starting diving into this, getting some skills that you can apply. I hope that it's helpful. I'm going to send a couple of documents over chat. They were also available over email, and I've got a start here and an end here document. So we've got a couple of options for engaging with this particular session. The start here document's what I suggest opening on your computer. That way you can work through it as we go through here. That way you get kind of the muscle memory of doing it yourself, but you can also make notes on that. If for some reason you just want to take notes instead of editing the document as you go, that's totally fine too, but we'll be talking about it as we're going. So give me 1 second. Let me get opened up on my side of it. Awesome. And I've got my screen shared. Can everyone see this? Is it big enough for everybody? Can you give me a thumbs up? Look good? Perfect. Thank you. Awesome. So today we're going to be talking about creating accessible documents, specifically creating accessible. We're going to start with thinking about Word documents and Google Docs. Accessibility is a very big conversation. We're going to go at it from a universal design for learning approach. I really like the UDL approach. I think it's very applicable. I am not an expert in UDL. There's a ton of resources out about it. So if you are curious after this, feel free to explore more. I'm sure it's a concept that y'all have heard before, or at least a little bit familiar with. The author that I've read the most of and have really enjoyed is Katie Novak. She's got a bunch of different texts on UDL. That's at least the one that I'm the most familiar with. For Universal Design for Learning, I just want to start with who has heard of Universal Design for Learning before? Give me a raise of hands or a thumb up if you've at least heard that term. Sweet. We got one. Awesome. Universal Design for Learning is an interesting approach to thinking about creating accessibility in classrooms. One of the things that I really like about UDL is that it's a proactive solution, not a reactive solution. So as we're building our course materials, if we take this UDL approach and just kind of keep it in mind and develop it into our learning philosophy approach, in the future, it can save us a lot of scrambling and headaches and, trying to serve our students at the last minute kind of feeling. I always like to feel prepared ahead of time. So if you can kind of grasp your head around this UDL concept and sort of work it into your practice, then it can save a lot of stressful experiences in the future. We know that legislation has been passed and our courses are going to have to be a certain level of accessibility pretty soon. And so if we can go ahead and start, as you're updating your courses over the next year, go ahead and start working in some of these principles. It's going to save you a lot of work on the other end once the other accessibility features are required by the state level. So UDL, the main framework is it's based on 3 different principles. Multiple means of representation means that information is presented in a variety of forms. It could be a video, it could be a written document. Multiple means of action and expression. Learners can demonstrate what they know in a variety of ways. So if we have a forum post, you can either record yourself or you can write a brief essay. And multiple means of engagements, motivating learners by offering choices and relevance. So today, for example, you can work through this document with me as you go or take notes. And part of UDL is for you as the learner to be able to exert some level of agency in your learning so that you can find what works for you. It's not necessarily a learning styles approach because a lot of research is very conflicted as to whether learning styles is effective or not. But giving learners the option to engage with the material in a couple different ways allows them to learn how they learn. And so if you try today to take notes on this instead of working through the document and it doesn't work for you, you can go back and review the document later because I've included the ending one. So that idea of allowing students to have some agency to be responsible for their own learning process is kind of a core principle of UDL. So I just want to ask, so one of these multiple means of representation, can I get somebody to give me an example of what that might look like in one of your classes? Welcome, Rachel. How's it going?
Hi, yeah, so I'm thinking about maybe a written description of a concept, a visual model of the concept, and maybe a video related to it that shows the concept in context.
For sure, that's excellent, thank you. And it does cover that. We know that students need to experience information a variety of times. There's a lot of argumentation about how many times, but you can kind of hit that with this UDL framework by doing exactly what Rachel's suggesting, using a variety of different formats to get to the same place. Can anyone give me an example of what multiple means of action and expression would look like in their classroom?
So I don't know if I'm correct or not, but one thing that we try to do in the nursing program is kind of change things up a little bit to keep them motivated and interested. And if one of the things I like to do is a true and false quiz, and I have a little placard that's got Chimney Rock on one side, something in that area, and then Looking Glass Falls on this side because we do distance learning. And I just do kind of a quick true and false quiz that's really basic and easy. They've never gotten any of them wrong, but it's a good way to sort of reintroduce content that we've had that's not just saying, Justin, what's the answer to number one? You know, that way it's a group thing and it's a very easy, non-threatening way to get them going.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. So multiple means of action, so they're able to interact with the content through this true false framework instead of maybe just through a conversation or through a single individual test. Awesome, thank you. And finally, multiple means of engagement, motivating learners by offering different choices and relevance. Can anyone give me an example of what that might look like?
Well, I'll give you an example. I mean, nursing does some crazy things. So one of the things that we do in nursing is a lot of simulation. So it could be simulation literally in the classroom where they are acting out an encounter with a patient, or it could be simulation in our high fidelity lab where they are acting out a scenario, but yet what we use is a sim capture. So we're actually video and audio recording them so that they can look at themselves later. And we find that to be relevant to them because they can see, oh, wow, it took me a long time to do that particular action. Or, oh, wow, I should have said this instead of that. So that's what we do for our nursing students.
That's awesome. Thank you, Amy. That's really cool. Nursing in the medical field is specifically really interesting, I think, whenever it comes to UDL. I like to think of the example, I want my surgeon to be able to tie a suture. It is a very important thing that they're able to do. I'm not terribly concerned if they learned that watching a video, or if they learned it in a classroom, or if they learned it from a textbook, so long as someone has, with credentials, has verified that they are able to do that. hopefully maybe in a school setting, and then also in some kind of apprenticeship, medical field. I hope that they know how to perform that action, how they learned it, how they got there. There's a variety of paths that they could get there through, so long as I know that at the end of that, they know how to tie a suture. So one of the things that they talk about in UDL is firm goals, flexible means. And we have to get really clear on what our goals are. What is it that we expect students to be able to do? Or no, is it knowledge-based or is it content-based? We got to get really clear on those goals. And if we can get really clear on those goals within our course development projects, then we can allow for some flexibility as to how to get there. If I want students to be exposed to a certain amount of or a certain type of information, is it okay if they read it versus listening to it? Sometimes I'm going to be okay with that. If it's just exposure that I'm looking for, if I want them to respond to something, recording it via audio or writing it up, if my goal is to be able to write in a certain fashion, in a certain kind of style, if I want APA style, if that is really my goal, then I need them to write it. And there can be some, kind of questions or options around that. But if my goal is I want them to have some familiar engagement with a particular idea, writing it versus just talking about it in a recorded session, it can kind of go either way. So a lot of UDL is based on that idea, and you can kind of approach it from a backwards design model. We can get really clear about what our goals are going to be. We can work backwards to figure out how to get students to be there. One way, if y'all are familiar, we have a software in the LMS called Ally. Ally is extremely useful. Ally will give you a score for all of your different courses for how accessible they are. It's not perfect. It only reads the first page or page or two of documents. So you still have to be involved in thinking about accessibility within your courses, but it's a really good way to do an initial pass of your courses to assess them for accessibility. It also has some really helpful tools built into it. So if you don't have this document on hand, I'm going to show you a way that you're able to use Ally to correct documents as you go. I'm going to navigate over to that. Give me one moment here. Excellent. So this is a test shell I have made so that it looks like a normal course. If you navigate down to the bottom of it, hold on, let me turn on my, one moment, please. There we go. Cool. I turned on the little red dot on my cursor, so hopefully that'll help track it a little bit easier as well. So if you navigate to the course dashboard on my courses, and then navigate over to accessibility report, that's going to give us a score, a percentage score for how accessible our courses appear to be through Ally's analysis of it. Ally is not perfect again, but this is a really good place to start. It will identify specific issues and their severity. Anything with a red exclamation point is the most severe and has to be dealt with. Some of the ones with the triangle are going to need to be dealt with based on the WCAG standards that we're going to be operating under. But not necessarily all of them. So the triangles you need to address. Red needs to be addressed first, just as a layer of hierarchy. Red means that there's some major issue that's going to prevent someone from being able to access a document. If we go into this one, you can click the document, and it will tell you what's wrong with it. And this is I'm going to show you how to OCR read a document like this. I think we all have an old book scanned in style PDF like this that we love and we haven't been able to find a digital copy of yet. I'm going to show you how to fix that. But this will also show you how to fix issues within Ally. So whether it's doing proper headings or whether it's fixing a problematic PDF, Ally will give you some really good steps for working through that in case you kind of forget or you just need to do it within the LMS. So it'll ask you some questions. Can you get an original version? Yes or no? And then it'll just work you through a process of being able to fix those documents, whether it's headings or a contrast issue. So Ally is extremely helpful, both for identifying problematic documents, but also for knowing how to fix them. And I've got in this, you've got a little, all the buttons you need to be able to get back to there. So after this, you could go check your own documents. Awesome. So what one element of creating accessible documents is going to be for people who are using screen readers. And if you've never used a screen reader before, it's pretty interesting to practice just to see what it's like trying to navigate around within the document. One thing that's really important is we are able to, or as a seeing person, I am able to scroll through a document and kind of see the headings and see where I'm at. And that way I can kind of get an idea of where I'm at in the document. Or if you give me a textbook and say, read chapter, whatever it is, if that textbook is one long PDF without distinguishing headings, I can't navigate my screen reader through that without clear headings. With clear headings, I'm able to, heading 1, chapter 1 is this, heading 3, chapter, I can get down to heading 4, chapter 4, and then I can read that part of the document. But if it doesn't have a proper heading structure to it, you basically have to read the document from beginning to end in order to get to or find the material that you're looking for. So in order to, and this is where you can bring up your document and work along with me so you can get both the feeling of doing it, but also have a copy for you later. We're going to make some headings in this document. So under here, we're going to use proper headings. So if you will highlight heading 1 for main sections, you can see up at the top here, I have a variety of heading styles. You can pull it down, clicking this little button if you want more options. In this one, I'm going to use the default headings within Microsoft Word. I'm also going to show you on the last one how to adjust those to whatever you would like. So here I'm going to define this as heading 1. And what that's going to do is it's going to give a screen reader a place to land and some metadata to pull from. So it will now be able to say heading 1, main sections, and I can then navigate through the different headings. So if I wanted to go to heading 4 to figure out what heading I'm at, I can navigate with my screen reader, but I have to tell the document that that's what that is. There isn't a way for the document to just know the different headings. There are some things like Adobe can kind of guess at it, but it's not going to always be correct. So you really have to kind of get involved in this heading process to make sure the headings are correct. Is everyone following along so far? Can you give me a thumbs up? Cool. Are there any questions so far? Are we doing good?
Yeah, how did you get to that list of styles? I'm not having that pop up.
For sure. Do you see at the top of your Word, is there a, click home at the near the top left.
Right.
It should give you the option. Let me know if that works for you.
Yeah, I don't see style as an option anywhere.
Mhm.
When I click on the preset styles, it doesn't pull up any additional list.
Oh, I got you. With the, do you have these, does it look like this here where my little
It
red
does,
cursor is
yeah.
going over?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So this little bottom right thing, if you click it, it'll pop out that extra window.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
For sure. And you don't have to use that extra window. You can navigate through it like this as well. You can click down to heading 2 or 3, but this one's helpful because you can see all of them and then you can click the different styles. Sweet. Thank you for asking that. So now we'll do heading 2. If you will click heading 2 and heading 3, if you will click heading 3. Now, let's say I'm just using these stock Microsoft colors in this. Let's say you wanted to change those. You have a different style. You have a way that you want your documents to look so that they're consistent throughout your class. You can actually create new styles and you can put them in here and name them. You could call it whatever your name is style. You can call it particular class style. If you want to do a simple adjustment, let's say I don't love this color for some reason. I can change it to, let's say I want it to be, I don't know, this blue. I like this blue a little bit better. There's not a lot of difference there, but let's say I like this blue a little bit better. One thing you can do is after changing that, you can click 1 second. We'll do it with heading. Let's do it with heading 2 on this one. A little easier to see. Oh, cool. Got it. I don't know if it was there and I wasn't reading it or what, but I was getting stuck on the modify button. You can use the modify button to alter a text. But if you click update heading 2 to match selection, then it will update it to whatever that particular one looks like. So we can do. How's it going? Hello, Michelle.
Hey, yeah.
Then let's see, update heading 2 to match selection. So if I change heading 2, let's say I want it to be blue and a little bit bigger. Do 12 and a little bit darker. Awesome. Update heading 2 to match selection. Cool. Awesome. So just to refresh, because I got a little bit lost on that. You can highlight which heading you want, update it to whatever style you would like. And then at the top, if you right click, you can do update heading to match selection. That way you can alter the heading to fit in a style that works for you. You can edit the other direction. If you right click, you can do modify. And from modify, you're able to change the color and the size and all of that from that particular place. But I find it's a little easier to change it in my document because I can see what it looks like as I'm going. I know that was a little bit confusing. I'm going to give a brief moment for questions for clarity. What questions do y'all have about that so far?
So let's just clarify, when you modify the headings, does that do that globally? So anytime you add that heading, it's going to retain that style that you chose?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So you can define that heading, and there's places that you can define the heading either by document. So within this particular document, I want this heading to look like this, or you can go through and define it by this is what I want my headings to look like all the time. Let's say you have a particular style, you like your headings to be a particular size. You can set that within the document as the standard heading for that.
Okay,
Mhm.
yeah, and that's just for that document, but can you set more wider reaching?
Globally. Yep, you can set it globally as well.
Okay.
And to expand on Jamie's question just a little bit more, so Jamie's asking, when you were changing these headings, does it change it in the document or does it change it in Word? If you go under modify, there's a little check that says add to styles gallery or only in this document. So in this one, I've changed it only in this document. But if you wanted to, you didn't like Word's standard headings, then you can go through and unclick only in this document and save it as a particular style. That way it's always there for you within that style selection. Yep. Thank you for that question. Sure. Awesome.
I had a quick question.
For sure. What's up?
Yeah, I don't know if this is jumping ahead or if we already covered this. I know you said with the ally reports that we can do through My Courses, is there like a report creation function in Word itself? Like after we are, create a document in Word, can we do a report just in Word before we even upload anything to My Courses?
Yep, for sure. So under the review tab, and this is really important if the rest of you, if you're working on this document, go ahead and do this with us so you can see where it is as well, because this is pretty helpful. Under review up at the top, you can do check accessibility, and that's a really good way. Word will give you, of course, Word isn't perfect either. It has a contrast checker and it will look for proper headings, but you still have to have an idea of how these things operate. But it's a built-in accessibility checker, so you can do it from Word. You can also do, and this is pretty handy, read aloud, which kind of helps if you're trying to get an idea of what this would be like from a screen reader, you can do read aloud and that will read your document to you. You don't get the full experience as though you were using an NVDA reader, because NVDA readers, that's the one I'm familiar with, but there's JAWS, there's a lot of different screen readers. Those have navigation features and shortcuts that you're not going to get to using read aloud, but it does give you a little bit of an idea of what it would be like to move through that particular document. Does that answer your question? Cool. Awesome. So you choosing readable fonts and colors, it's really important not to rely on color being the only distinguishing thing. If you're saying all of the red dates are going to be online and all of the blue dates are in person, that information is not going to be available to me if I have a hard time distinguishing color. So as you're doing this, you always want to put another piece of information in there to distinguish things that are distinguished by color. You can use color as long as they have a high enough contrast rating, but be sure not to rely solely on color as the piece of information. So here we could go back in and add some more information. If I do this and I say that these dates are online and I say that these dates are in person, that's going to be able to fix that so that that sole distinguishing piece of information is not solely reliant on the color variance, but there's some additional information in there that I'm going to be able to pull from. There's a really handy, I'm not going to go into it yet, but it would be good to check out later. There's a contrast checker website that's extremely useful. You can go into this website and pull the codes from whatever color you're working with, and it will give you a score, and that score will tell you whether it's WCAG accessible, and if so, what level. It's a really helpful tool. I don't want to get into it now because it would take a while to get through it. But just so you know, if you're ever concerned with, is this contrast enough between the text and background, you can use this contrast checker and it will give you a solid answer based on that. Another important element is using descriptive hyperlinks. So if you're using a screen reader, click here and then a random kind of website doesn't really tell me a whole lot. Or if it even just says like, click here doesn't tell me where I'm going to go. If I'm able to, as a sighted individual, highlight that or use a little tooltip over top of it, I can see where it's going to take me. But if I'm navigating through this with solely a screen reader, that's not going to be possible for me to understand where I'm going to go. I could end up anywhere. I could click it and then figure out where from the top where I'm at. But in order to know where I'm going to go, it's good to create hyperlinks that describe what's intended. So in this case, we can do the same, do a hyperlink is fine, but that could be click. Now I have click here to explore the UDL guideline site. That gives me an idea of how to interact with the thing. Click here. And it tells me where I'm going to go. Where's this click going to end me up at? It's also a good practice to consistently do if you have the possibility to differentiate within the LMS, open and new window versus open and same window. It's a good idea to always do open and new window. It always gives you a new window to navigate back to. That way you don't lose your place in the LMS. And how is quick check-in? Was everyone able to do that? Did that make sense for everybody? Can I get a thumbs up if yes? Sweet. Are there any questions? Anything anybody's wondering about? You doing all right over here? Yeah, I'm good. Awesome. Thank you. Cool. Alt text is really important, and alt text is something that will come up whenever you look at your ally score. It will say this is missing alt text. Alt text gives the image some metadata so that a screen reader is able to see what that image is. It's a good practice when you're creating banners for your course or if you're using images. The alt text in my courses is limited, so you're not able to put in a full paragraph if your image contains a lot of text. It would be a good idea to do, in a sense, the alt text underneath it. If there's limited words, it's good to just do an alt text. But be careful using images that are solely word-based for a full paragraph, because you do have to follow those up with an additional paragraph underneath. I forget the characters. You could probably do a long sentence, but probably not two in terms of alt text on our learning management system and my courses. In other places, the alt text can be longer, but it's best practice not to do an extremely long alt text to not put yourself in that situation. So in Word specifically, we can right click, navigate down to View Alt Text. And then over here, it's going to give me some guidance on what should be in the alt text. And it says 1 to 2 detailed sentences recommended. So you don't want to have an extremely long alt text. You want it to be pretty concise. So this can say, universal design for learning with black background. If there are any other relevant details in there, you want to be able to include that. There is a possibility within Word for it to generate alt text for you. It's getting better, but I wouldn't say it's there yet. Often it will miss what the text actually says. It will say like black background with text. So I wouldn't do the auto-generated ones. But this is alt text. And how you add it, at least in a Word document. If at the end we're curious and you want to cover it, I can show you that in my courses as well. But if you upload an image to my courses, it will usually prompt you to add alt text unless you say an image is decorative. But even a decorative image, if it's a cute picture of your dog, tell me it's a cute picture of your dog.
Wes, can I make
Yep.
one?
Yeah, what's up?
One tip that I've learned,
Mhm.
it may seem like a small detail, but make sure you add a period after the alt text. Because what that will do is with a screen reader, it will actually know to pause after that if you have more than that. So it's actually a really helpful thing because I've seen both ways with it. We'll just, well, is there more to this sentence or not? So just using a period at the end of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's cool, Jamie. Thank you. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So that it would tell it at the end that this is a complete thought so that it can then move on. So it knows that it's moving out of the image then. That's cool. Thank you, Jamie. Awesome. I want to take a quick check-in. Are there any questions? Is anybody wondering about anything? Cool. Awesome. Tables. Tables are something that as sighted individuals we love to use. We feel like it's a really good way to get across complex information and the ways that it's interrelated. Tables are really hard to navigate with a screen reader. If you imagine reading this top left, left to right, top to bottom, if you try it yourself, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Feature accessible practice, why it matters, heading, use it built-in heading styles, improve screen reader navigation. It doesn't make a lot of sense because it will just read it in this weird list that doesn't have context, because the context here is solely shown in a visual way in the relationship of the different ideas. So you have to tell the document what the table is and where the elements of the table are so that the screen reader will know, just like you have to define headings, you have to define headings within a table. That way the screen reader can tell the individual, this is heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. It also then gives them some really handy navigation tools to be able to move around a table. Tables are generally thought of as pretty complex, and if you can use lists instead, that's generally going to be better. You can make tables accessible, and I'll show you how. But if you're between a table and a list, lists usually lend themselves to be more accessible, although you can make tables accessible as well. So in order to make a table accessible, if y'all will highlight with me this top row, you should get, so long as you're under the Home tab here, you should get an option that pops up that says Table Design. If you get that option, will you give me a thumbs up? Make sure we're all getting that. Cool. Anybody having trouble finding that? All good? So if you highlight this top row and you've selected table design, on the top left here, we're able to define header row. And what that will do is it tags it with metadata so that a screen reader is able to tell the individual header row 1, feature, header row 2, accessible practice, header row 3, why it matters. And that way they're able to move through the column in a way where they're getting that important piece of context. It's also good to do first column. So if you highlight the first column, navigate to table design, you can do first column. Those two changes make a world of difference in attempting to navigate this with a screen reader. It gives you the important context of where you're at in the table. It gives you some tools for being able to navigate around the table. Those two designations help a lot with screen readers. Are there any questions so far about tables? Give you a brief moment.
Question about that.
Mhm.
So you've got the different columns, and I know that I realized that that could make the screen reader a little confused, and you said it's easier to put it in the list. Is that, can you have both? Would that make it easier, or is it better to just change the format altogether?
It's possible. You could do both. You could say a table and you could have a list.
Yeah, cause
You-
on like the rubric, for instance,
Mhm.
using that,
Mhm.
yeah.
That's a really good example. On a rubric, you just have to make sure if you follow up with a list, that you're telling them in the list that it's a follow-up to the table. So if they're navigating through and that table is completely unreadable to the screen reader, they're not gonna know that within that table, the information is replicated below it. So as long as it's clear,
And so would you make it clear by saying, list provided for screen reader access?
for sure,
Something like that.
yeah,
Okay,
for sure.
okay.
And you would want to distinguish that before the table, I believe. Table available here, following is a list for screen reader access.
Yes, so then they have both. Okay,
So cool?
yeah. that's
Sweet,
helpful.
awesome. Cool, creating lists instead of tables. And that was a really good question from Michelle. Can you do both? Definitely. You just want to make sure you're saying that you're doing both in a way that's accessible to a screen reader so that that individual doesn't go through all of that information twice, because we've all watched a video twice and it takes a minute to realize you're doing that. This next piece, this is, I feel like we all have an old book placed, scanned in PDF that we love. And we feel like that's the only place that that information exists. I can't find it in a downloadable document. I don't have the original one. I don't have the book anymore that I could make a new copy of it. I just have this PDF that I love, and I feel like it's the only place that has this really important information, or it's the only place that articulates it in a certain way. You can recover those PDFs. It does take a little bit of work. It takes a little bit of time, but I'm going to show you a way that you can do it with tools that you already have access to. If you have access to the Adobe suite, you can use Adobe Acrobat, and Adobe Acrobat will OCR it for you. And OCR is optical character recognition. It's where a computer uses some form of digital AI recognition to define the letters with metadata. So like earlier in the document, we told it that heading 1 was heading 1. This is basically telling the document that A is A, because documents will read those as images. It's a picture of a book. Unless it's been OCR read, that means that the optical character recognition is stored within each letter as a piece of metadata. You can see those within documents because if you go into your PDF, often you can go into a PDF and you can highlight and scroll through that, and you can see it kind of pop up with different pieces as it's highlighting the letters. That means that that metadata is stored within that document and you have access to that data. If you try to do that and it won't, and it kind of jumps to the whole picture weirdly, that means that it doesn't have that metadata in it and that a screen reader would not be able to read it. It would just be seen as an image. So I'm going to show you, just using the Microsoft suite that y'all have access to, how to OCR a document. And you don't have to follow me through this process. You can watch it. It's a little bit, there are a lot of steps to it. I want you to see it and we can ask at the end if you have questions. If you want to move through it on your own, feel free. But I think this is a helpful thing. Okay. So if we have a document, let's say I have this old digital media literacy, and if I scroll down, you can tell that this has been just like flat book recorded. If I love this book and I want to keep using it, but I need it to be OCR read, here's how I would go about that. If you open it in Microsoft OneNote, we can do insert, file attachment, digital media literacy. And at this point, you want to click insert printout, not attach file. Attach file does something different. For this particular use case, we need insert printout, and that's shown on the how to create accessible documents page. Give it a second to load that. Now we have that PDF within here, but this is still just a series of images. This is just image, image, image. So screen reader is not going to have access to this. If you right click, copy text from all pages of the printout. So far as I know, this is the only way within the Microsoft universe to OCR a text. You would think it would be possible within Word. You would think that there were a lot of places that would be possible. So far as I know, and I've been wrong, lots of times. So far as I know, currently, this is the only way to OCR a text within the Microsoft universe. So if we do copy text from all the pages of the printout, you can simply right click and paste that onto here. Now, there are going to be a lot of problems with this document that we would need to address. If I really love this document and want to keep it, I'm going to have to do some work to make that happen. Something that you're going to notice is the formatting is going to be a little weird. You're going to have to go in and define the headings. It might have missed some words, and you're going to have to make sure you've got all the words in it. If it had tables, you're probably going to have to replicate those, or like Michelle said earlier, you could do the information below in a list, like table above, list below. I'm not sure the legal accessibility standards. I think that it would cover it so long as the information was equally contained and presented. I think you could do a separate list below and not have to make that table accessible. In an ideal world, you would replicate the table, but I think that just doing a list below an inaccessible table, I think would be, so long as it had the exact same information, I think that that would be, okay, I think that that would work. Is that right, Sarah? That way? I think so. Okay, cool.
Yeah, as long as it had the specific Yeah, so that it was equal, I see what you're saying, yeah, I wouldn't change anything.
Cool.
Yeah, or
Sweet.
summarize it.
Awesome, cool, thank you. So this, if you have an old PDF that you just love and want to continue using, this is a way to not just have to type it over, but you can pull out all of that information that's available using OCR, but you do still have to verify this. Just like whenever we're not covering videos today, but just like when we're doing a video, YouTube's auto captioning feature is pretty good, but it's not great, especially when you have dialects or non-standard language types. If there's anything that's not just like what it expects, or if words are slurred, or if there are mistakes or sounds in the background, all of that can cause a lot of issues. Names are problematic. So there are auto captioning features in YouTube, but those are not good enough yet. We still need to go back through and edit those and make sure that they actually say what we're intending for them to say. What I know that's a lot of information, and it's something you'd probably have to practice a few times to really get the grasp of how to OCR a text like that. Hopefully this gives you the tools where you could get to it to try it, but I want to give a second for us to talk about if y'all have any questions around OCR or this particular process. I'm gonna give us a minute if anybody has any questions.
Wes, I do have a quick question. So while I'm going along with this, my computer popped up and said I needed an update on Microsoft Word. So I had to log out of there, restart it. That took a couple of minutes. How often should that be happening so that our Microsoft Word is up to date with everything that you're showing us? I'm sorry if that's a silly question, but
No,
should
not
it
at all.
happen?
That's a good question. How often to update it? I don't know. Do you have a,
Generally, office updates are pushed by policy from IT, but a lot of times they're also pushed in with the regular Windows update. I think it depends on what it is, if it's a security fix or if it's like a quality improvement. There's a lot of variation there as to how the Office program is updated. You can always check the online version, the Microsoft 365 version, and if you wanted to check accessibility there or function there, that'll ensure that you're on absolutely the latest version if you really need that. If you want to check a difference or two, but there's a lot of play in how Office is updated.
Okay, thank you.
For sure. And I think that brings up an important consideration too. We used to live in a software world where I bought the 2005 version of Word or Photoshop or whatever it is. Now we've moved into the subscription world where I have a constantly updating software that's always kind of changing a little bit as we go. If you're using it every day, the changes are sometimes not noticeable. Oh, they moved this button here, that button there. If you take a year break or a sabbatical and you come back, sometimes it's kind of surprising how much those softwares will have changed. If you're ever wondering how to do one of these things that we talk about today, a quick Google of how do I do X in Word will give you some pretty easy ways to get back to it. Because as in our current world, Microsoft is kind of, all these softwares are kind of slowly changing. So the buttons of things and where they're at and how they work, they're all changing in these updates that are rolling out pretty regularly. So instead of, it used to have a massive change from each iteration, now it's a slow iterative process that accumulates over time. So if you're looking for something, if you've noticed that the buttons change a little bit or they move places, that's one of the reasons. That wasn't exactly your question, but I thought that might be an important thing to point out. I wanted to briefly mention equations. Equations are just like everything we've talked about so far, have to be defined as what they are in the document for them to be accessible. If you have something defined as an equation, screen readers have a variety of equation reading add-ons that you can do. that will be able to read that equation. But if you don't tell it that it's an equation, it's not going to read that correctly. It's just going to jumble it. It's not going to make sense. It's not going to read it in the right order. It's not going to read it in the right with the right contextual data. So with equations, if you ever do have to define that, you can do it by just defining that it is an equation. The easiest way is up at the top. If you do insert an equation right here, then it'll give you a little window and you can enter an equation into it. I believe it's also possible. No. Yeah, I believe you have to do insert an equation and put in the information. I think at one point you could right click and define it as an equation, but I think currently you have to do insert equation and put in that information. And that gives a lot of really valuable metadata so that screen readers are able to read this equation correctly. On Google Docs, everything that we've talked about so far is still relevant. You have to give it the metadata information to know that headings are headings. You have to give it the alt text. Most of those things are the same or similar in Google Docs. There's some variances and some differences as to where where the buttons are. You have a question?
No, I'm sorry,
Okay.
we were talking about how this applies to blind folks, but then like deafblind and visually impaired people. We were just kind of noticing and thinking
Yeah.
about what that would be like.
Yeah, it would be interesting. So if you are deafblind, the amount of
Yeah.
information you would need to be able to make context out
Yeah.
of something.
Well, and it would have to be, the screen reader would have to be attached to a braille writer, basically, or have an interpreter doing tactile for it. So anyways, just is interesting to think about what the options are.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's really cool. That's cool.
Mhm.
Yeah. Let's see. The only thing within Google Docs is tables in Google Docs are kind of complicated. You can do tables in Google Docs. You cannot define, so far as I know, how we did headers in the first column. You can't define that as a piece of metadata within Google Docs. So if you open a document in Google Docs and use its accessibility features, it will read you the top heading and the first column. But if you have a Google Doc and you export that as a PDF and upload it, it's not going to have the appropriate metadata within a table for a screen reader to find it accessible. So with Google Docs, you would want to do something like Michelle talked about earlier, having a list below it. Or if you use the original Google Docs, there are some ways within Google Docs' own software that you can navigate through the different headings and columns, but it's baked into Google Docs. It's not available to NVDA or JAWS or something else. So if you use Google Docs, you kind of have to stick with Google Docs in a way, which is probably intentionally designed on their part. If you try to export as a PDF, you're going to miss some really important metadata for making that table make sense. You can always pivot and do a list, but that is an important thing to know. Docs is a little bit simpler and easier in a lot of ways. There's also a review function in Google Docs, so you can go through and review accessibility of your course there. But tables and docs are complicated. So I want to kind of wrap up here. We got about 5 more minutes. I want to see what questions or thoughts. What are y'all thinking about at the end of this? What's come up for you?
Carl's got a question in the chat.
Cool.
Just the last thing that is in the chat.
Will a future session for UDL for PowerPoint be a possibility? I guess if there's a enough people are interested in covering that, that would be up to Sarah if you want to schedule another. I'd be willing to do one if there's enough, if there's a need for covering PowerPoint and making them accessible. I think we could do one so long as there's feels like there's a need for it, for sure. Cool. So that's two votes of that one. Cool. Maybe we could do like a UDL accessibility series. It would be interesting because the legislation that's coming, we're all going to need to know how to do these things, or at least have some information for why, even if we get institutional assistance in doing it, there's going to be a level of knowledge of why headings are important, whether you're the one that defines the headings or not. There's going to be a level of knowledge of accessibility that we're going to be held to by these legal standards. Alt texted, I think we can make that a verb. Need to be alt texted if that's a verb. And there are some softwares that can, using AI, alt text, and that'll sometimes give you a place to start. I'll look into it. Yeah, I'll look into it and see. Yeah, we'll look into it. A PowerPoint would be interesting. What other questions? Are there any questions about anything we've talked about today?
Wes, would you mind just to review quickly the hyperlink? That's the only thing I want to look at that for 30 seconds.
For sure. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, glad to. Sweet. So we've got it here. And with hyperlinks, you just want to make sure, kind of like earlier, whenever we had the red text, blue text, you want to make sure that there are multiple means of representation when it comes to information. So you want to make sure that you're not solely relying on one type of information to get something across. So here, I could hover over and I can get a tooltip that tells me where I'm going to go. It's not like virusland.com or something. And you can see UDL-CAS guidelines, org, that looks safe. With a screen reader, I don't get access to that particular metadata. Some do. Let me rephrase this. Some do, but it's weirdly complicated. So it's better to have the information of where you're going to go built into that. And that's nice for regular classes as well, because then you know where it's about to take you to. And you know, if you end up on a different website that a link is broken or something's wrong, like if I click here to explore UDL guidelines and they've updated their site, and it takes me somewhere else, I kind of know where I was supposed to go. So it's kind of a good for user design standpoint too.
Mhm.
Yep. Yeah. As kind of a brief exit ticket, safe to say, the syllabus template was checked. Was the syllabus template accessibility checked? Is the syllabus template accessible?
Yes.
Yep, you're good to go on syllabus template. Last one, can I have one individual comment on our exit ticket? How do you feel about applying UDL to your classes or to your work here at the college? Just one individual, because we're about to wrap up. No problem. Do y'all feel, is it overwhelming? Is it exciting? Is it interesting? Does it feel like a path forward?
Yeah.
Oh, sweet. Cool, good. This was helpful. Overwhelmed. For sure. It's a lot, it's a lot of information. It's a big task that we're gonna be required to do. I really appreciate the UDL approach of kind of proactively starting to work on these things so that by the time the legislation is, we are held to those standards, we have a little bit of a head start in working through our courses. So we don't feel like we have to do the whole thing at once. And assume that that's true. And a lot of these things, if we're doing this for a screen reader, it will apply to other people as well. If you think of curb cuts are often we think of them as being, made for wheelchairs, but it also helps with strollers. It helps me if I'm carrying a ton of stuff or I need to make a delivery. Those changes that we make in these documents don't just help particular students that are sighted or not sighted. A lot of these things that we do make documents accessible in ways that they wouldn't otherwise. So if you OCR your PDF, if I have a 2-hour commute, I am now able to listen to that PDF on my 2-hour commute. Ideally, I'm reading it, but I at least have access to that. So a lot of these accessibility changes end up helping everybody. We all end up using them when they're available to us. And we all need help. That's an essential thing to this, is at some point, as humans, we all need help. No one's an island. Awesome. Well, I want to thank you all so much. Be respectful of your time. Thank you all so much for coming. If you have any follow-up questions later, feel free to shoot me an email. Hopefully you can keep this document as a way to get back to this information. Also, remember to check out Ally and my courses. It's a really helpful source of information as well. Thank you all.